5 Live Formula One.
Good morning and welcome to round 2 of the 2026 Formula One season. The circus has travelled to China, to the Shanghai International Circuit, playing host to the first sprint weekend of the year. We've had our one and only practice session topped by the two Mercedes of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Now it's time to go qualifying for the sprint. It's Harry Benjamin with you up in the commentary box. Alongside me is the Formula E driver Sam Burden. Well, Sam, it was a clean sweep for Mercedes in Australia, 1 and 2 in practice. It's looking rather ominous, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Harry. It's looking very good for the Silver Arrows. They're quite a distance ahead of the rest of the pack. Behind them, though, Lando Norris came in third in free practice, ahead of the Ferraris, so that could be an interesting battle between those three cars.
Yeah, it certainly could. Let's also say hello to the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Can Mercedes or Ferrari get in the mix here in sprint quali?
Mercedes definitely can.
Oh, sorry, I mean McLaren. Can Mercedes get it the quickest so far?
I don't know, but it doesn't look like it. I would say that it was a bit closer between Norris and Russell. Norris was half a second off Russell in first practice. Of course, it's only first practice, so we don't know. And Norris did do that lap right at the end of the session, whereas Russell's was a bit earlier. I think we've only got one race to go on so far, but the pattern of Australia was that Russell particularly, but Mercedes in general, had a big advantage over one lap. But in the race it was quite a lot closer, and Ferrari messed up their strategy. Otherwise Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton would have been in with a chance of hassling George Russell for the win and potentially getting on the podium. So I'm interested to see how it goes. The deployment patterns are very different around this Shanghai track compared to Melbourne, and McLaren particularly have got a Mercedes engine, of course. Their car's not in the same good place as the Mercedes is yet, but they will hopefully have learnt a little bit from Australia. So let's see what they can do in this first qualifying session in China.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the main challenges, particularly that we saw in qualifying last weekend at different track, as Andrew alludes to here, Sam, we've got heavy braking zones. It seems like the main challenges will be on that energy management side and where you deploy, where you harvest, and how efficiently you do that. But also we saw the tyres are taking a bit of a hit throughout FP1.
Tyres are taking a beating. It's front limited circuit here in Shanghai, so what you might see if you're able to view on a television set is the fact that the front left tyre, you might see a darker band on that tyre. That's the graining occurring, basically the scarring of the surface of the tyre. That's occurring through turn 1 and through turn 12 to 13. The deployment, as you said, Harry, is going to be interesting to keep an eye on. Where are people deploying? How much they can deploy down the straight, the 1.2 kilometre straight between turn 13 and 14. And also watch out for people making mistakes, running wide and having snaps of oversteer through turn 1, because that seemed to be a common theme of quite a few cars in free practice.
Yeah, it certainly was. Just a few moments then until we get sprint qualifying underway. 3 sessions, SQ1, SQ2 and SQ3 will lose the slowest 6 cars from the first 2 sessions and get the usual top 10 shootout now that we have Cadillac on the grid and an extra 2 drivers as a result. The 5th season of sprints in Formula One this year. We're going to have 6 of them. This is the first. The second one will be in Miami. Then we'll go to Canada for our 3rd sprint race. Silverstone hosts at the British Grand Prix in the final year of the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. They will also have a sprint along with Singapore as well. But it was a happy hunting ground here last year for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton, Sam, and he's looked buoyed from the start of the season. Actually, it looks like he might be on course for a better year, more embedded perhaps now in that team.
Yeah, he needed a reset, didn't he, after what was a very challenging first year with Ferrari last year. I don't think he gelled with his engineer, the results didn't come, and then as the season progressed, he just looked more and more downbeat, and it looked like he just looked tired, didn't he? Tired and unhappy. But this year he's come back fresh, rejuvenated, looks happier. He's got a different engineer helping him through things this year, which is always important, to trust your engineer and have him as not only somebody that sets up your car there as your best friend, your ally, the person you want to go to war with, pretty much, go into battle with, I'm excited to see what Lewis can do this year. He looked good in Australia, had a bit of a difficult run in FP1, but he's there.
And a bit of news from the Cadillac team, back of the grid, of course, for the new team that's been made out of nothing in the last few years. Sergio Perez will not be taking part in sprint qualifying. They've had a fuel system issue at the end of the first practice session. They couldn't fix it in time. Everything's okay with Valtteri Bottas' car at the moment.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Checo didn't really get out in the one and only practice session, so only one Cadillac in this session, so that does give somebody a slight reprieve then, because Perez will be confined to the back of the grid. We'll also wait to see with bated breath about Arvid Lindblad as well, who pulled off on the side of the road early doors in practice with what looked like a suspected engine issue. We haven't had confirmation from the team yet, but he has, I believe, just got out onto the circuit, so making up for a bit of lost time is the British rookie. But green light on at the end of the pit lane, and we are 10 minutes and 50 seconds remaining of this first part of sprint qualifying.
We said that Arvid Lindblad would be up against it in this sprint qualifying. The news of Sergio Perez already being out, now you'd expect him to be quite a bit quicker, but that's just one less car that he needs to beat in order to get through to Q2.
It certainly is, as Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin sits patiently in the garage. Looks like he will be momentarily released. Lance Stroll, his teammate, is already out there. Honda powering Aston Martin this year in what we know is a relationship that started off under strain with an engine that cannot deliver the power they want and battery issues on board. But good to see Lance Stroll out there and getting some laps on the board. But they do believe they are just treating the early part of this season more like a test than anything else. We're expecting the two Mercedes to have the edge over the field. They've not even emerged from the pit lane yet. Isaac Hadjar heads into turn one, a right-hander that seems never ending. 270 degrees clockwise, you turn all four wheels. He's on the medium tyre before you then sling yourself back out of turn three through the left-hander, apply the throttle, and then you're heading down to the first proper big braking zone moment of the lap through to turn six.
Yeah, obviously purple sector one for Isaac Hadjar, but he is the first to do a lap in anger around this Shanghai circuit. Now sweep it through turn 7 and into turn 8. Pretty much flat out here for Formula One cars, but you could hear the lack of power through turn 7 when the battery pack isn't working, Harry.
21-year-old from Paris, Hadjar looked a little down on time in practice. Max Verstappen, fastest of anybody in that first sector now, as Hadjar clouts the curb as he now sets himself up through the long right-hander that leads you on to that back straight, 1.2 kilometres. This is the sound of the Red Bull with their own powertrains being provided this year in partnership with Ford. Gets a bit of a slipstream, but then you can hear the engine just dialing down as he approaches the braking zone, hits the brakes, turns it into the right-hander, feathers the throttle, and out on exit of 15 with just with one more corner to go.
Hugely different deployment from Hadjar compared to what he had in free practice this morning. You really heard a lot more deployment going on down the straight between 13 and 14. So it is interesting, isn't it, how teams are swapping and changing things around in this early phase of the season as they get used to this new phase of Formula One.
Every lap you're learning something new, aren't you? Every corner as Charles Leclerc is fighting to hold on to his Ferrari as he comes through the double left-handers of turn 9 and 10, hits the brakes into the left-hander of 11. It starts to tighten up before you climb uphill and then set yourself up again for that back straight. But Alex Albon and the Williams were saying, before we used to do so much learning away from the track and the simulator. Now the biggest learnings are being done, at least in this early phase of a new era of the sport, on the track with every corner that we go racing.
Absolutely, and little things like having the GPS there of all the other cars is going to be so beneficial, learning from that and understanding, right, we now understand where Mercedes are deploying their battery. So that's where they're doing. We've got to try and emulate that schedule.
Ferrari across the line with Charles Leclerc fastest, the 1:34.248, 2 tenths quicker than Hadjar. Verstappen third, Lawson and Lindblad the top 5. But early times being set as Hamilton now goes up to the top of the times.
And I think Ferrari might have changed their rear wing and gone
Have we
back.
lost the flip-flop?
I think we might have done. From what I could see then, it looked like a faster reattachment, and therefore I think Hamilton has gone back to the standardised rear wing.
We'll try and get a closer
Let's just
look.
check.
Yeah, we'll try and get a closer look.
If anybody can see that before us, get in touch with Harry.
Thanks. Yeah, my number is hashtag BBC F1. 6.5 minutes left of this sprint quali session. Time really does fly. Only 8 cars have set a time at the moment. It's Hamilton at the head of the field, half a second quicker than Charles Leclerc. Make that 2 tenths quicker than Hülkenberg now in the Audi, who's slotted up into second. Everyone on the medium tyre in this session. Verstappen 5th, Bortoletto is 6th, Lawson, Lindblad, Stroll and Bottas, the 10 drivers to have set any kind of lap time at the moment. A couple of cars have set lap times but have had their times deleted for track limits. Stroll the latest of them, down at turn number 9.
I'm quite surprised that Ferrari have gone out so early, seeing as that they are a competitive car and the track is just going to ramp up and keep on getting quicker and quicker as the laps progress.
And just an update on the tyre situation for this weekend. Pirelli offering the C2 as the hard, the C3 as the medium, and the C4 as the soft. Now, while teams are free to use any tyres, any of their available tyres in regular qualifying, in sprint qualifying, sets of the new medium tyre are mandatory in the first 2 parts of sprint qualifying, and then in SQ3 drivers have to run a soft tyre, but they don't necessarily have to be a new set. So everyone now on that medium tyre. Piastri to the final corner across the line. The Australian puts it into second, just under a tenth away from Lewis Hamilton. It's George Russell, though, who is fastest of anybody in that first sector. Lando Norris is going to cross the line next and pips his teammate, but not a lot in it. Norris half a tenth of a second slower than the Ferrari of Hamilton, but I think that gap is about to get bigger. First of all, Antonelli goes to the top of the times, finds a few tenths, and Russell now makes himself known as the British driver who leads the championship after the first race of the year, puts in a 1:33.030, 4 tenths clear of his teammate at the top.
They really are looking strong at the moment, aren't they, Mercedes? It's very early days in the championship, but they most certainly have the car to beat right now.
Into that elimination zone then. We're looking at Bottas at the moment, along with Albon, Sainz and Stroll, but none of those lap times actually representative outside of 107% for Valtteri Bottas, 6.8 seconds adrift, but should be able to see the likes of Carlos Sainz coming into the final sector now, along with Alex Albon, the 2 Williams that we know are struggling out there, overweight, and Sainz confined to the garage for much of free practice earlier on today, trying to find more time. Could be in trouble, along with the likes of Franco Colapinto, who's right on the bubble in 16th spot. Meanwhile, with just over 3.5 minutes left, Hamilton is now back out there, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. His teammate Charles Leclerc is coming round the final corner now through the left-hander. The rear wing opens, and you're right, Sam, on Leclerc's car, they've gone back to the old spec, not with the flip-flop wing, as he crosses the line, just under 4 tenths of a second away from Russell.
Hamilton coming to the line now. Harry's in P4 right now, goes up to second. Purple sector 2, purple sector 3. So that Ferrari working quite nicely.
Sun coming out, glinting off the scarlet Ferrari as Hamilton slows into the right-hander of turn 1. Air temperature just under 17 degrees. Track temperature just nudging up to 30 degrees C as well. As Verstappen reports on the radio, the shifts are terrible, and it's kind of being reported like that in the times as well. He's 1.1 seconds adrift, Verstappen. He's down in 8th. Hadjar a few tenths further back down in 11th, as the Audi of Hulkenberg cements 7th place ahead of them.
Hulkenberg will be kicking himself there. He was on a really strong lap and then had an enormous slide through turn 16, had to bail out of the throttle, otherwise he would have been sending it deep into the gravel trap. But you know, the Audis are going well here. Hulkenberg up in P7. Okay, Bortoleto a little bit further down, but Hulkenberg's showing some good speed.
There will be time for some final runs for those that need it. Russell clear of the field by a tenth with a 1:33.0. Hamilton and Leclerc right behind. Then comes Antonelli and Norris, the top 5, as we hear Gabriel Bortoleto and his Audi head to the gravel at the final corner.
Both Audis then having a bit of a problem at the final corner on the previous lap, but they'll now. This lap will be about getting the tyre back into a decent window, both its core and its surface, but more crucially than that even, getting the battery in the right state to start their final push lap.
Norris 5th, Piastri 6th, both in the pits, along with the 2 Mercedes. Hulkenberg 7th, Verstappen, Behrmann and Lawson are the top 10. Then comes Hadjar, who's out there now, and Verstappen 2, both personal bests in the middle sector. Ocon is 12th, Gasly, Bortoleto, Sainz and Lindblad 16th. At the moment, at risk of being knocked out of SQ1 is Alex Albon's Williams, Franco Colapinto's Alpine, the 2 Aston Martins, and the only Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas down in 21st. Sergio Perez, with a fuel system issue, will not be taking part in this sprint qualifying.
Yeah, no surprise to see the Cadillacs off the pace at the moment. Let's hope that they can find a little bit more pace as the season goes on. But you know, for a new team, how to even be out there, I think is some effort. I know that it's been a real grind. I know some people that work at that team, and they've been working flat out just to ensure that they're even moving forwards, and getting the car to Australia was challenging enough.
Yeah, it was a year in Australia that the entry really well, it was a year on, but the entry was first submitted and properly ramping up for Cadillac, who have got an uphill battle, but they are up for the challenge, and the grid is greater for them. Somebody's had a little skirt through the gravel at the final corner, as it's left a plume of smoke for Liam Lawson and dust to make his way through and up into 9th. Lawson running well, actually, and it looks tight in that midfield pack. Hulkenberg best of the rest at the moment, as the clock is counting down. 5 seconds to go. Who's in trouble? Carlos Sainz is right on the bubble. At the moment, it's the usual contenders you'd expect to be out in SQ1. Gasly gets himself up to 7th. Good run from the Frenchman in the Alpine. His teammate, though, Franco Colapinto, is in trouble here, but is on a better lap. Can he find his way through? Colapinto down in 19th at the moment. Yes, he does. Gets himself up to 15th. That puts Gabriel Bortoleto at risk, down in 16th. Sainz will come to the line next. He can't improve. Sainz is out in SQ1 with what looks like his Williams teammate Alex Albon is coming through the final sector now. Bortoleto still in with a chance of improving his lap time, as he's right on the bobble. Alonso, Stroll and Bottas behind, all looking confined to being eliminated in SQ1. Albon will not make it through. Both Williams eliminated, as Ollie Behrmann has a moment in the final corner. Sam.
Yeah, very difficult start to the season for Williams, isn't it, Harry? As we spoke about before, overweight car, not sure on the handling characteristics and some reliability problems, so difficult start for them. Ollie Behrmann at turn 16, yeah, big oversteer on the way in, and that's another corner that's very, very tricky on this circuit.
So it's interesting looking at that back 6 that we've got. Obviously, Perez didn't run. Bottas is more than a second slower than the slower of the 2 Aston Martins, and Lance Stroll, predictably perhaps, is 6/10 slower than Fernando Alonso, his teammate. Then Alonso's really quite close to Albon, only a couple of tenths, and Sainz is 6/10 quicker than Albon. But we know what's wrong with Cadillac.
This ability is horrendous.
That's Verstappen asking for the team to double-check the drivability. It's horrendous out there for Max Verstappen, who ended that session down in 11th. And we're just hearing a replay of Max Verstappen coming into the final corner now, looking unstable. The rear end sticks out. He has to correct it, all the while losing lap time. It's not a comfortable ride out there for the Dutchman.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't hear the beeps for the radio. But we know why Aston Martin are slow. The Honda is nowhere. Honda have messed up their engine for these new regs. The Cadillac is a new team. There's excuses there. But Williams are the ones that really stand out, aren't they? They are, Sainz 34.7. He's 0.3 slower than Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls. And Arvid Lindblad missed the entirety of P1, basically. So they're a long way off the back of the rest of the midfield. And for a team that has been talking for 2 years as if 2026 was going to be their sort of launch pad for their campaign to be back to the front of the field, and who finished 5th last year, let's not forget, after a very impressive season, they're really not in a good place, and they haven't really given a proper explanation. They've talked about stretching the capabilities of the team, but James Vowles has been team principal there for 3 years now. Why are the team's capabilities still being tested to beyond the extreme by whatever they're trying to do in building a new car? You really have to ask what's been going on there the last couple of years as to why they've ended up in this position.
Well, they were going along nicely, weren't they? Considering last year they effectively wrote it off and said, look, we're just not going to develop this car. They got a couple of podiums with Carlos Sainz driving brilliantly in Azerbaijan. And where was the other podium, Harry?
Azerbaijan. Where did he get the other
Mexico?
podium? No, it wasn't Mexico.
But he definitely got another one, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
He definitely got another one. But considering no real development on that car last year, or very limited development, you're right. They've been saying for a long time now that this was the year where they could go forward. There's a huge lock-up actually from Albon, which is one of the reasons why, part of the reason why he wouldn't have made it through, but the car's just not quick enough right now. But it's such a shame because, in Qatar, it is such a shame. I was looking forward to seeing them back towards the front. I grew up in an era where Williams dominated Formula One, and they were my favourite team growing up. You had people like Damon Hill. He was winning before you were even born, probably, Harry.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So it's disappointing. James Vowles will be disappointed, and his leadership's been so good. How does he now bounce back? How does the team bounce back, and how do they rebuild and try and move forwards, because they are miles off it right now?
The key issue is weight. They're reported, I've heard that the number is about 28 kilos overweight. Now,
but how when you've had 2 years?
That's the question. Now that's at least a second a lap, right? So if you take a second off Sainz's lap time, 33.7, that puts him with Lando Norris in 5th place. But that's the key point, Sam. Why on earth are they so over the weight limit?
And people might be thinking, well, just lose that weight. Well, you can't. It's
in a cost cap era.
You might be able to shed a kilo, 2 kilos over the course of a year, maybe even a little bit more, but you're never going to lose 28 kilos. You've seen cars in the past actually lacking liveries and just going basically carbon fibre tub, carbon fibre body parts, bodywork, in order to shed a little bit of weight. I think we saw that with the Alpine, 2 years ago? They pretty much just had a plain car.
Every part they could.
Absolutely. But to lose that amount of weight, that's a big uphill task.
Delayed start to the year. They didn't even make it to the Barcelona shakedown, did Williams. Only team not to be present at all. Even Aston Martin got half a lap in. But for the team that finished 5th last year in the Constructors with Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, they are confined to 17th and 18th. And out in sprint qualifying, only ahead of the 2 Aston Martins and the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas in 21st position. Perez should hopefully be able to start the sprint from the back or the pit lane while they hope to fix that fuel system issue.
Now, we've just seen a graphic, Sam, haven't we? And it's a very similar graphic to what we saw in Australia. It showed the lap time comparisons between the Mercedes and the Ferrari, Russell in first, Hamilton in second. And the pattern is the same as it was. The Ferrari's quicker in the corners, the Mercedes makes up its lap time on the straights. And this is the key thing. Mercedes have really aced these regulations, particularly in terms of energy deployment. What we were seeing in Australia is they can keep the electrical deployment going for longer than anybody else, particularly George Russell, and that's what's giving them this big advantage at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You can hear the note of the engine down the straight, and when you hear that tone giving off, going down in tone and pitch, that's when the battery power is effectively run out for that straight. George Russell's able to stay on an upwards trajectory with regards to revs for a lot longer than everybody else.
We're back up and running. Green light on at the end of the pit lane. SQ2 underway as they head out into the sunshine. Quite bright skies that surround the Shanghai International Circuit. Just over 5.4 kilometers in length, 3.3 miles, 16 turns, 9 to the right and 7 to the left. It's a tricky circuit. It's a challenge, and one that a lot of drivers relish, with long straights, that 1.2 kilometer back straight. You've got medium speed sweeping corners that make up the middle sector, and a few tight and technical twists to get your head around too, Sam.
You've got some really prolonged corners, haven't you? Especially 1, 2, 12, 13, 7 and 8. They really take it out of those front tyres, specifically that front left tyre. Now, okay, in these sprint qualifying sessions, these medium compound tyres are only going to be doing a maximum of 3 push laps. But even by the end of the 3rd push lap, those fronts have had it because of the way that these guys are pushing on the tyres.
Sound of Lando Norris is what you're listening to now, warming up his tyres, weaving left, weaving right, as he now sets himself up for the back straight. Qualified last year at the sprint in 6th position, which is where he finished the Australian Grand Prix in last week. The reigning champion doesn't quite have the out-and-out fastest machinery he's been used to, with McLaren on the back foot, a little bit overweight as well, not to the same level as what we've been mentioning to Williams about, but also with a Mercedes engine that is clearly the class of the field. But as a customer team, they don't get all the insights and they don't get all the data supplied to them about how best to run that engine, whereas Mercedes effectively have come up with the conception and can build their car around it.
Yeah, if that sounds trivial, it's really not. The amount of data you've got, the understanding teams need to get the most out of these engines is quite micro in the detail. So we were hearing in Australia, for example, that 1 or 2% of battery charge on the entries of one of the corners before a long straight made a difference of 3 or 4 tenths by the end of that straight. It sounds almost incredible, but it's getting that 1 or 2%. It's getting the battery in exactly the right place, knowing what the right place for the battery to be is even. McLaren are finding that they're sort of searching in the dark for all this data, whereas Mercedes, of course, have been running simulation after simulation after simulation on the engine at the factory. They've arrived at the circuits with the information that they need. McLaren are not able to enjoy that advantage at the moment.
Oscar Piastri down through the gears, making his way through the left-hander of turn 11, swings back round through 12 and 13 as you set yourself up, carry the momentum down the 1.2 kilometres straight. Audi have been running well so far, particularly Nico Hülkenberg. A shame that a technical issue prevented him from starting the Australian Grand Prix. He was right on the cusp of a top 10 in qualifying. His teammate went on to score points in Gabriel Bortoleto. Both Audis still in this one, a good baseline from them, and they're right in the fight in that tight midfield. You've also got the Haas's in there and the Racing Bulls that are all playing their part in the midfield scrap.
And it is a scrap, and it's quite tight in the midfield, which is exciting. Out front, it's a little less exciting as we see Ollie Behrman getting a little bit wide out of the final corner. Goes quickest at the moment. That's obviously going to be overtaken by quite a few cars, I can imagine, as Gasly goes the best part of half a second quicker in his Alpine.
I think Gasly could be on for a decent weekend here. Managed to salvage something from an underwhelming weekend in Australia by getting a point. Look quick in SQ1. It's still early stages in sprint qualifying too, but top of the times in these early stages for Gasly.
They've got a Mercedes powertrain, haven't they? So again, a little bit like McLaren, they've got the tool behind them that is extremely valuable currently in Formula One. They've got the right engine. It's how they use it. Now, are they getting any more support than McLaren? Probably not. But, you know, they've definitely got the right power source in the back of that Alpine. It was a shame to see Renault as a manufacturer or Alpine as a manufacturer not have the support of their own engine. But they've made the right call.
It certainly does feel like it's given the team overall a bit of an uplift, but still smoothing around the edges as Charles Leclerc goes to the top of the times. It's a 1:32.602. We'll see his teammate come to the line as well, Lewis Hamilton. 6.5 tenths back though from Charles Leclerc. It's the two Ferraris, 1 and 2. Then comes Verstappen, Gasly and Hadjar, the top 5. Hulkenberg is 6th ahead of Ocon, Lawson, Behrman and Lindblad, the top 10. But we see improvements now from the McLarens. First of all, Oscar Piastri gets to within 6 tenths of a second of Charles Leclerc, puts it second. Norris just behind in third, and they all get pipped down the spot as Kimi Antonelli shows what he's got, goes to the top of the times by 32 thousandths of a second, but fastest of anybody in the first sector and the middle sector, personal best in the final sector, and by 3 tenths of a second Russell goes to the top of the times.
It's been consistently in this qualifying session about 3 to 4 tenths quicker than his teammate, hasn't he? Just found that little bit extra when it mattered, because this morning in free practice it was a lot closer between the Mercedes duo.
Just getting a look at Behrman running out wide and kicking up the gravel on the exit of turn 16, costing him a bit of lap time. Was quick in practice earlier. Both Hasses actually looking strong. Behrman though down in 14th at the moment. Here's Norris radio.
Yeah, he's blocked me.
Understood. Antonelli right in the way.
Yeah, I was going to push that lap, but he got in my way.
That was a really bad block turning into turn 1, wasn't it, Sam? Goodness me.
It was a bad block. But was he going to push? Was he? I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, Lando's, maybe he was going to push, but Lando's also clever enough to make it look like he was going to push in order for a rival to incur a little bit of a penalty. That's the cynic in me anyway.
Well, yes, it wouldn't be the first time the driver had done that, would it?
No.
We'll see whether the stewards look into that or not.
I mean, if it was a block, it was a bad block.
And that was the Mercedes are coming out of the pit lane, and a fast-charging Lando Norris coming into turn 1 and not happy about it on the radio, but they both live to fight another day. We'll see if that gets brought up on our race control screen. Right, 11th downwards, that's the elimination zone, and it's currently Esteban Ocon on the Haas, Gabriel Bortoletto's Audi, Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls, Ollie Behrman in the other Haas, Lindblad and Franco Colapinto down in 16th at the moment, 2.5 seconds off, needs to find time. Isaac Hadjar, you can see there, conserving energy, harvesting it before he properly slams on the brakes for the right-hander of turn 14. And from race control, that Antonelli Norris incident has been noted for impeding. We'll see if that gets elevated. Hadjar to the line, doesn't improve, stays 9th fastest, 1.3 seconds down, and actually he's not far away from his teammate really either.
No, they're within
7th. Yeah,
they're within the same 10th, aren't they? Pierre Gasly splits the two Red Bulls, and it's a big gap, isn't it? 1.3 seconds. I know Russell's up the road right now by 3 tenths to everyone, but that's still effectively 1 second off the pace from where they'd probably want to be.
I'd expect to see Hamilton close that gap a bit because he's a second back at the moment, but personal best from Hamilton in the middle sector as the active aero, the front and rear wings shut as he heads to the braking zone for the right-hander of turn 14, takes you out to the left-hand side of the track before he brings it over to the right, slings it into the left-hander, the final corner, into the sunshine for the Scarlet Ferrari, and across the line he finds the time, but he's still got a sizable gap to his teammate. He's 8 tenths adrift of Russell. Hamilton up to 4th, but still a few tenths shy of what his teammate has been able to do. Leclerc in 3rd, and actually now the two Ferraris split by the McLaren of Oscar Piastri.
So right now it's the Mercedes duo dominating qualifying out in Shanghai. Then you've got the Ferraris battling with the McLarens, the Red Bulls battling with Pierre Gasly. So it's not 2 by 2, but there's starting to be a little bit of a pecking order, isn't there?
Yeah, it certainly is. Mercedes 1 and 2, Leclerc 3rd, Piastri 4th with just 15 seconds on the clock. Then it's Hamilton, Norris, Behrman's just shot up to 7th. Ahead of Verstappen, Gasly and Hadjar is right on the limit. Now Gasly takes that best of the rest slot in 7th, 1.1 down, but this could be tight here, and it could be last one over the line as the clock counts down to 0. Hulkenberg out there at the moment in 11th. Hadjar's not going to get another go at this. He's come into the pit lane, and he is very much at risk here in the Red Bull. Hulkenberg 11th, but not exactly flying. Ocon decent in the first 2 sectors. Liam Lawson takes the flag, does not improve into SQ3, gets 13th spot. We look for Gabriel Bortoleto. Arvid Lindblad takes the checkered flag in 15th. Colapinto doesn't improve. Nico Hulkenberg, can he find a way through and knock out Hadjar? Ocon can't. He stays 12th. Not many improvements then in this final stages of SQ2. Hadjar might get away with this one. Hulkenberg's not flying out there. So the two Red Bulls should just be able to cling on then into the top 10, and out go the Audi of Nico Hulkenberg. And actually we're just seeing a look at Max Verstappen flying across the gravel in that final corner and having to rejoin the track. Hulkenberg finds the pit lane, so he is out in 11th. Then it's Ocon 12th, Lawson 13th, Bortoleto 14th with Lindblad and Colapinto.
The Dolphin is just on the racing line out of the last hairpin. It's ridiculous.
So that was Verstappen putting the blame on the Alpine for that one.
Well, I think he was annoyed because the Alpine cost him a little bit of time, probably half a tenth on the exit. He's frustrated as well. He's not quick enough. He wants a car that's quick enough, and I think a lot of that frustration is because of that. And then, he obviously got in a bit of a position with a bit of oversteer in 16, had a snap and took him through the gravel. Going to the people eliminated in SQ2, Colapinto, Harry. Now,
not great, is it?
I worry for his seat already. We're only in, sprint qualifying of round 2 of the World Championship, but he had a disastrous year last year, really disastrous. When he came into the Williams, everybody thought, wow, what a breath of fresh air, this guy, this new Argentinian, he's great, he's going to do big things. He didn't do much in F2. He did a really super job when he came into Williams, but last year was bad, really bad, and it starts again. He's getting slaughtered by Gasly. How long until the top brass at Alpine decide to put somebody else in that seat? Because from what we've seen on Netflix and things like that, they want a driver to be as quick as Gasly, and right now he's not doing it.
Well, he brings money, Colapinto. That's kind of why he's got the seat. I don't think he even in the Williams I wasn't that impressed with him. There were circumstances around him looking close to Albon in the first couple of races he did. Then he had 3 massive crashes, 2 in one weekend in Brazil, 1 in Las Vegas. You're right, last year he was a bit rubbish after replacing Jack Doohan after 6 races, but over the winter, when people were talking about where Alpine were, and they looked like they were at the top of the midfield, which is where Gasly is right now, behind the top 4 teams, although he's ahead of both Red Bulls. People said Alpine, and then they would correct themselves and go, no, Gasly. Even people within the Alpine team, and they were acknowledging that Colapinto had a lot of work to do to get on Gasly's pace, and Gasly's not exactly, one of the great drivers in Formula 1. So you're all right. They've got Paul Aron, an Estonian who's been the reserve driver there for a couple of years. They've just signed Alex Dunn, the Irish driver, who was on the McLaren Young Driver programme last year, but kind of fell out with the team over various circumstances we won't go into now. They signed him up over the winter. They're going to give him a test to see how he stacks up compared to Colapinto and Aaron. So that'll be interesting. But neither of them bring money, and they do need money, and so that might be the thing that keeps Colapinto in that seat longer than he perhaps deserves to be on the basis of his performances so far.
Will they need the money if Mercedes buy a stake in the Alpine Formula 1 team, which I believe is on sale at the moment?
Well, Flavio Briatore wasn't giving any answers to that, was he? I was told in Australia, you may remember over the winter, that Christian Horner was linked to a consortium that was interested in buying the minority stake held by Otro Capital, I believe they're called, in Alpine. It's like 24% or something. I was told in Australia that ain't going to happen. Horner's not going to get involved in that team. The latest rumoured going around is that Toto Wolff is linked to buying into that shareholding. Briatore kind of didn't deny it, but didn't exactly give an indication that it was going to happen anytime soon in the press conference earlier. So we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, it's important to say we're talking about quite a small shareholding. The Renault Group will continue to be in charge of that team, so it doesn't really matter that much whether someone comes in with a minority shareholding. Is it going to make any difference? But yeah,
it could do to data, especially now. If Mercedes or Toto Wolff were to come in, there could be a collaboration with regards to the deployment schedules, something like that could be really beneficial to Alpine and get them even higher. They could be getting podiums in the near future if that were to go ahead.
Yeah, well, we'll see what level their car is at the moment. They were a bit disappointed by their performance in Australia. Alpine, they were expecting to be better than they were. This is much more like what was expected of them. But there's a bit of this season to play out before we're clear about where exactly they lie, because they're a funny team and Gasly's a funny driver. So, he has tracks where he does really well and then tracks where he doesn't. Bahrain is one. Unfortunately for him, looks like that race isn't going to happen this year because of very unfortunate circumstances, obviously. We'll get confirmation on that in the next few days probably. A little bit of time before we can really get a clear read on where Alpine are. But Ollie Behrman, it's worth saying, in the Haas 8th, another very encouraging performance from him and that team. They are delivering as the sort of top midfield team at the moment.
Yeah, let's just remind you then who we've lost so far as we get ready for the final part of sprint qualifying. Not making it through, just edged out. Nico Hülkenberg's Audi in 11th ahead of the Haas of Esteban Ocon. Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls 13th ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. In the other Audi, Arvid Lindblad in 15th. Franco Colapinto then, as we've been discussing, out in 16th. In the first part of sprint qualifying, we lost Sainz and Albon along with the two Aston Martins of Alonso and Stroll, with Valtteri Bottas bringing up the rear of the field in the sole Cadillac in 21st. Sergio Perez with a fuel system issue, not getting out, and that leads us nicely into SQ3 then. 7.5 minutes and counting. The two Mercedes, the two Ferraris, the two McLarens, the two Red Bulls, and an Alpine and a Haas all take to the track as we figure out the top 10 and who will be on sprint pole here in China, which I think we can all kind of predict who it's going to be.
I think we can.
However, you never know in this game until the checkered flag flies.
No, I think the interesting thing is who will be on second, third and fourth, to be honest. I think George Russell, barring him making mistakes or getting laps cancelled or deleted for track limits, I think that he's looked by far and away the strongest so far. Interestingly, I saw Lewis Hamilton making an adjustment, well, not him himself, because it'd be difficult to. He'd have to have arms like Mr. Tickle, but one of his mechanics making it looked like a front wing reduction ready for this SQ3.
And what would that bring?
Well, maybe he had a front end that was just a little bit too sharp, so he wanted a little bit less downforce on the front end.
A few minor tweaks then for Hamilton in this final part, a scene where he took sprint pole last year ahead of Max Verstappen and went on to take the sprint win. It would be the only time he would reach any kind of podium last year, but now back for a second season with Ferrari, more embedded, more comfortable, and a car that does seem quick, particularly on those starts. So it almost doesn't matter where the Ferraris qualify, because even if they're 4th, 9th on the grid, they might well be leading the race by turn 1.
Absolutely, yeah. Their starts have been electric, both in practice in Bahrain and out in Australia. I don't know whether you've said it, Harry, yet, because I wasn't listening to you.
Wow.
But this is this is the session where we see the drivers go out on the soft compound tyre for the first time in this qualifying session. So we expect the times to be quite a bit quicker than what we've seen in SQ1 and SQ2.
I did say it, but about 20
You did?
about 20 minutes ago, so I'll let you off for that one.
No one was listening.
Wow. That's the voice of the Formula E driver Sam Bird, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin. We've also got the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. This is sprint qualifying ahead of the first sprint of the year, which you can hear on 5 Sports Extra. Lights out for that at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. It will be an early one, but I'm sure it will be fun and engaging to get up for. But right now we'll figure out who's starting where for that first sprint race with just under 5 minutes left on the clock. The 2 Mercedes already flying out the box. Everybody heading out there on soft tyres. Only 5 cars out there at the moment. The 2 Ferraris, the 2 Mercedes and Max Verstappen. But we should say the Red Bull of Max Verstappen is struggling at the moment. Both Red Bulls just don't seem to have the out-and-out pace of the top 3 teams to get themselves in that contention. We know Verstappen, if he can find anything, he'll find it in this final part of sprint qualifying. But right now, when you've got the likes of Pierre Gasly and Ollie Behrman in fast-charging midfield cars, that could cause an upset for Red Bull this afternoon.
Absolutely, they've looked uncomfortable, especially Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, particularly unhappy with the balance of the car. He's very particular about his upshift and downshifts as well. He's been complaining about them. So we've got quite an unhappy Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. We're so used to seeing him looking dominant. Right now, it looks a bit of a struggle as he goes 3rd at the moment, albeit quite a long way off the pace.
Yeah, and still waiting for Charles Leclerc to come through. He does so and displaces Max Verstappen. Leclerc up to 3rd, and Hamilton will do the same by the looks of things. Coming through the final corner now, the Ferrari looking a little bit loose, but he keeps his foot to the floor and heads across the line, and it's 3rd for Hamilton. 3.5 minutes remaining. It's Russell on provisional sprint pole ahead of Antonelli, Hamilton and Leclerc, the top 4. Then it's Verstappen with no McLarens yet to take to the track, but it is imminent with Gasly, Behrman and Hadjar predicted to follow. So really they're all just allowing for one push lap really in this sprint quali.
I think they realise that the tyre is good and best on its first lap. They also, I think that the track is just going to ramp up and get quicker, so why waste the tyre at the beginning of the session?
As the tyre warmers come off Oscar Piastri's McLaren, and he duly heads out on track, followed by the Haas of Ollie Behrman and his teammate Lando Norris.
So Harry, another chasm between the Mercedes and everybody else. 6/10 is the gap, more than 6/10 between George Russell in 1st and the first non-Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari, in 3rd place. So very much the same pattern as was seen in Australia last weekend.
Mercedes, who have put together a fantastic car and engine duo to really hit the nail on the head with this new set of regulation changes. 50-50, near enough split between internal combustion engine and hybrid power, with a focus now for all the drivers and teams on battery management throughout a lap and topping up that battery, deploying it where necessary, finding the most efficient way of doing that. But at the same time, you've still got to keep your tyres up to temperature. You've got to be able to manage tyre degradation, which we're seeing here as well, particularly through the graining, can cause an issue and always has done in China. So many things for a driver to think about now over the course of a lap.
Hugely complex, these Formula 1 cars these days. So much to think about, as you said, when to deploy, when to try and recharge. How are my brake shapes? What's the handling like overall anyway? I need to keep the tyres alive. Where can I push? Where can't I push? All these things while you're driving at 300 kilometers an hour. That's why these guys are paid the big bucks.
Kimi Antonelli, who is quick, but not as quick as his teammates so far. The gap at the moment after the first fly is just over 3.5 tenths between the two Mercedes. Hamilton's got the edge over Leclerc right now in third and fourth, with Verstappen 1.7 seconds adrift. We'll see what Norris, Gasly, Piastri, Behrman and Hadjar have got. They've left themselves with one flying lap. They cannot afford to make a mistake. The two Red Bulls are struggling. We could see surprise results for an Alpine or for a Haas. We'll keep an eye on Gasly and on Behrman. Both scored points in the opening Grand Prix of the year. And for those midfield teams, it is so crucial to capitalise on points when you can. Sprint points are awarded in the race down to the top 8. As Antonelli finds time in the final sector, personal best, but only just claws in on George Russell, who cannot improve on his final lap. A 1:31.520, but that should be enough for Russell to take pole in Shanghai for the first sprint of the year as we await for the rest of the order to unfold.
And Charles Leclerc's on his best lap of the session so far, but stays in fourth, doesn't improve in the final sector, so it'll be second row or worse for Charles Leclerc. His teammate Lewis Hamilton currently sits in third.
Yeah, 3 tenths up the road, give or take, for Hamilton, to looking like he's going to out-qualify for the sprint his teammate Charles Leclerc. Let's look for the remainder of the top 10 to come through. Gasly will come to the line first. It's actually Oscar Piastri who's fastest of anybody in the first sector. Gasly sees the checkered flag and it puts himself up into 5th ahead of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is still out there in the final sector and finding time. Lando Norris gets ahead of the Ferrari, but behind the Mercedes, 6 tenths the gap. Norris slots into third. What about his teammate Oscar Piastri? Round the final corner, keeps it neat and tidy to the line for the Australian. It's only 5th for Piastri. Hamilton splits them. Leclerc 6th, Gasly in 7th. Behrman takes the flag in 9th. We'll see what Hadjar's got as he comes round the final corner now. Verstappen's not going to improve here. He stays 8th. Hadjar can't improve either. It's 10th for the second Red Bull, and it's sprint pole for Mercedes and George Russell, and it's another front row lockout with Antonelli in second.
We're going to have to get a little bit used to this order, I think, Harry, of George Russell being on pole.
Okay, nice job. So that's P1. Good job.
Yeah, he's driving superbly. I think his understanding of this regulation is incredible. He's obviously worked very hard in the simulator with his engineers, and also the sim drivers need to get a big shout out at Mercedes as well for helping develop that powertrain. But what a good job they've done.
A first career sprint pole for George Russell, the third British driver on a sprint pole in 3 Shanghai sprint races as well. Joins Lando Norris, who did it in 2024, Lewis Hamilton last year, and now pulling up in that sprint pole position is George Russell as he undoes his belts, takes the steering wheel out. It will be Russell with the best view in the house for tomorrow's sprint race, ahead of Antonelli. Lando Norris in third, then comes Lewis Hamilton in 4th. Oscar Piastri managed 5th ahead of Charles Leclerc, and winning best of the rest, Pierre Gasly in 7th, out-qualifying Max Verstappen, out-qualifying both Red Bulls in the Alpine. A great result for them. Verstappen 8th, Ollie Behrman only managed 9th in the end, with Hadjar rounding out the top 10. Certainly the two Red Bulls seem like they've got work to do to get themselves back up in the top 4 as Russell heads over to the Parc Fermé area to be weighed by the FIA official. Packed out grandstands in Shanghai, witnessing these cars over one lap. They'll get their first bit of racing action tomorrow for the sprint race, which is 19 laps of racing, a 100-kilometre dash essentially, with no mandatory pit stops. And you can hear it right here on 5 Sports Extra. We'll be on air at 2:55 in the morning ahead of a 3 a.m. lights out. So maybe that's one to listen to in bed with a cup of tea. Lando Norris in thirds. A good effort from the reigning champ.
Yeah, it's a small step forward, isn't it, for McLaren? We've seen them work so efficiently in the past. When they've been off the pace, they just tend to make the right decisions under Andrea Stella's leadership, and I think that they'll just continue to chip away at Mercedes. And if if I look at it, I think that by mid-season they'll be right up there.
Well, we'll hopefully hear from George Russell after securing sprint pole down in Parc Fermé, potentially in a few moments' time. There are some investigations. The incident between SQ3 incident involving Hamilton, no further action, or that's just the usual failing to follow race direction. Antonelli and Norris impeding, that is now under investigation, so we'll see if anything comes to Antonelli for that one, and also Gasly and Verstappen for that turn 14 impeding. Also, now that the session is over, that will be under investigation, so we'll try and keep track of that. Be a shame for Gasly certainly if he's docked any positions as a result for that, but I tell you what, let's hear from our sprint pole sitter down in Parc Fermé, speaking for Jamie Chadwick.
Time screens all day, now you're on sprint pole. Talk us through the session.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, hello to all the fans in China, who there's been amazing support for everybody here. It's special to be back, and yeah, the car's been feeling amazing. We knew after Melbourne we had a really good car, the engine's performing really well, and today it was a real joy to drive, so happy. I'm intrigued to know what the lap times are compared to last year, because it felt really quick, and that was pretty cool, very different to Melbourne.
They're not so far off, I think about a second, but you're a very popular man here in China. How special is it to be here and also to drive a qualifying lap at this circuit?
Yeah, it's been really surreal seeing so many blue caps and so much support in the grandstand. So I've sort of embraced a little bit of the culture with my special helmets over the last couple of years. So I think that's been appreciated.
And looking ahead to tomorrow, you've not got the fast starting Ferraris quite so close, but how confident are you?
Well, since Melbourne, everything we've been working on is just trying to get off the line better, what we can do. I think we've found some improvements. Melbourne was obviously slightly dicier in the opening laps than we would have liked, but I guess we'll find out in the morning.
Okay, it's 7 tenths that you're off apparently from last year.
7 tenths, so it's not too bad. Not too bad.
Good luck tomorrow, George.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers for George Russell then on sprint pole. Yeah, the pole time last year was 1:38.49. Russell's time this year 1:31.520. So we're not far off, but interesting that he felt like he was quicker. He was going quickly in that sprint quali, was George.
Yeah, well, there's more braking zones here than there are in Australia. More areas where you can recuperate the energy and then deploy. I thought that the loss down the straight after using all the battery would look bigger here, but actually it wasn't too bad at the end there in qualifying. I think more people got their heads around it.
Before we sign off, Mr. Bird, a prediction for the sprint race tomorrow. I mean, you've already been pretty bold with your Lewis Hamilton win.
No, I didn't say that.
Did you not say that?
No,
what did you say?
I said podium. His first proper podium, but I meant for the
race. All right, well, we'll leave that one for sprint race. What for sprint
race? I'm saying Mercedes 1-2. And then, I mean, pick. You could literally pick out of a hat, couldn't you? I'm going to go with Lando Norris. So where they start right now, however, I expect it to be fraught, and I expect there to be lots of overtaking.
We'll look forward to it then. It will be on 5 Sports Extra, lights out for the first sprint race of the year, 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, Sam Bird. Thank you, Andrew Benson. We'll be back again for the sprint race, and then we'll have qualifying as well for the Grand Prix on 5 Sports Extra. We'll be on air at just before 7 o'clock ahead of the green light coming on at 7 a.m. Saturday morning for Grand Prix qualifying. The race on 5 Live on Sunday, lights out 7 in the morning. Thank you very much for your company. It's George Russell on pole for the first sprint of the year. We're all going to be back later, by the way, on 5 Live. You can listen to our preview show for the weekend, and reaction to sprint qualifying will be on from 9 o'clock this evening on 5 Live. And if you can't catch it on the radio, you can catch it on BBC Sounds as well. Just search F1 on your BBC Sounds app. My thanks for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.